And Megan, I don't know, did I copy you on the note to Fiona? She had kind of an emergency come up last night, so I'm trying to get Clarice. Clarice will try to be here, but might have to miss part of the meeting.
Okay. Do we have a quorum yet?
I am trying to determine that right now. Dan just showed. Um, we we do have a quorum. We barely have a quorum, but we have a quorum. And Mel is here.
All right. Do we want to get started then?
Yes, we are recording, and Nora is here. I made you a co-host. If you could keep an eye on the um, if people need to be admitted from the waiting room. And just gonna double check here. Um, yeah, so I think the show is yours, Megan.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I hope you've had time to enjoy the sun the past couple days before we have tons of rain. Um, but yeah, why don't we just get started? So let's officially call the Basin 7 WIC meeting to order. I have 9:02 on May 28th on my clock. We'll start with introductions as usual. So I can start and then just call on folks, and maybe some other people will join us momentarily. So I'm Megan Rodier. I'm the book chair. Took over after Peter stepped down. And as you saw on the agenda, we will be nominating and hopefully voting in a new vice chair as well today. And I'm with the Lamoille County Planning Commission, as well as Richard Goff, who's here today. And I'm going to just call folks out and let you introduce yourselves, and just please let us know which organization you're representing and whether you're a voting member or an alternate of the Basin Council. So let's start with Brad.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brad Holden. I'm town administrator here in Underhill, and I'm representing CCRPC, Chittenden County Regional Planning, as a voting member.
Thank you, Brad. Dean, you're next.
Dean Pierce, Quist staff.
Excellent. And Richard.
I'm Richard Goff. I'm a member of the board of directors for the Lamoille County Planning Commission. I'm an alternate to Megan.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Next on my Hollywood Squares is Kristen.
I'm Kristen Leahy, the zoning and floodplain administrator for the town of Hardwick. I think I'm a voting member for the municipalities.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, because we voted you in last time, so officially a voting member. Thank you for joining us. Next, I see Joanna.
I'm Joanne Hanowski. I'm from Greensboro and with the Stewards of the Greensboro Watershed, and I'm the alternate.
Excellent. All right, and next up is Dan.
Hi, Dan Kahneman. I'm the district manager for the Winooski Conservation District, and I am an alternate for the conservation districts.
Good. Thank you, Dan. Mel, you're up.
Good enough. I'm Mel, and I'm with the Franklin County NRCD. I'm also an alternate for the conservation districts for Lauren.
Excellent. And Lauren is next.
Weston, District Manager for the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District, and I am a voting member and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you, Lauren. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Lucart from Lamoille County, NRCD, and I believe I was proposed to be an alternate, but I don't know if that happened.
Okay, Dean, do you want to confirm that?
Yeah, I have you on my list as an alternate, along with or maybe in lieu of Emily Finnegan.
Okay,
And
perfect.
yeah. And I guess one thing is anytime if someone calls out Emily, we need to clarify because there are so many of you.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Emily, for joining us. Next, I see Remy.
Hi, everyone. Remy Kurtol with Vermont River Conservancy. I'm the Northern Vermont Conservation Manager. I, up until this point, have served as an alternate on this committee. But Aaron DeVries is no longer with VRC. So we'll see what that means. I think Dean has asked me to take her place on the committee. I also serve on the Missisquoi as an alternate, and the Mem for Magog as a voting member.
Thank you, Remy, for joining us today. And I just want to say we really appreciated all of Erin's time that she spent with the Basin Council and all her input. We're sorry to see her move on, but hopefully she's moved on to exciting new things. So, great, thanks, Remy. Nora, I see you up next.
Hi, Nora Brown. I work with Dean at NRPC, and I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to keep my camera off. But I'm a minute taker today.
All right. Well, I hope you feel better soon, Nora. I see Chris Rutler.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for calling on me, Megan. I'm with the state with DEC. Good to see everybody.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris, for joining us. And let's see, who have I missed? I think I captured everyone. Is there anybody I missed? Just double checking here. Nope. And then so Dean, at which point do we need to vote Remy in?
No, he doesn't have to be voted in. He would basically be recognized as the new person representing the sector, taking over for Aaron. I did receive an email, so I have in writing that Aaron was giving up her seat as the representative of the watershed, one of the watershed organization sector seats. Only other thing I was going to also mention is that Fiona McMurtry, since we're doing introductions, had a last minute conflict arise, and Clarice from VLT may be joining us if her schedule allows, and I don't see her, so.
Okay. All right. Well, we can keep watch for her, and when she joins us, maybe she can introduce herself. Okay. So next is, of course, our meeting protocols. And so I know you are all familiar with these, but I'll just briefly go over them again. So introductions of all participants in each meeting, we did that, covered that. As possible, book members should have in their Zoom name, their title, their name, organization, whether they're a voting or alternate member, pronouns as desired. Book members are expected to have their cameras turned on for the entirety of the meeting as technically possible. Book members are expected to stay focused, avoid multitasking, and follow guidance of if you wouldn't do something in an in-person meeting, don't do it in a virtual meeting. Book members will use the raise hand function, so if you want to ask a question. All members will stay muted until called upon. If needed, quiz staff may mute participants to avoid background noise. Any comments made in the chat will be read out loud. That's the gist of it. So you all know the protocols, but thank you again for following them. So we can, make sure everybody's voices are heard. All right. Do we have any conflicts of interest today that folks would like to raise at this point? I'm not seeing any hands go up on that one. Nope. Okay. All right. So I guess we don't have any conflicts of interest today. So do we have, let's see, review of adjustments? So actually, we need to approve the agenda first. Why don't we do that first? So is everybody okay with the agenda as proposed for May 28th?
Dan, is that a motion or did you raise your hand before with a question?
I was wondering if maybe it makes sense, and I don't know if you can do this, for Silas to do his presentation before Sarah presents her proposal, just because it's like super relevant to her proposal, but maybe you don't want to do that and break up the project proposals. You're muted.
So Megan, if it's okay, I'll jump in. That thought had occurred to me and we kicked it around and we were concerned at one point, like, don't want to leave too little time for the application. Something that I had meant to mention earlier, if I had shared the slide, and you can see it now, one application has been withdrawn. So there would be time. The other complicating factor is Silas had emailed me this morning to say he'd looked at the agenda. He said, would it be okay if he joined at 10? And I said, well, actually, and then I said, could you join at 9:15 or 9:20? I would see some benefit to having Silas's presentation go before the application review. But he is not here yet. At least I don't see, and I can also check my email to see whether or not he has confirmed when he might join.
Well,
But
maybe I can propose flip-flopping 11 and 12 pending Silas's presence. I don't know. I mean, if he's not here, he obviously can't do it, but
okay, so his emails I just got had a semi-urgent meeting that came up this morning, which may go a bit long. Can we shoot for 9:30? So it's looking like he would not be here for another 20 minutes or so.
And is Sarah from the Conservation District of Lamoille County joining us today for the like a presentation on the application?
I don't know if anyone else was going to be presenting for.
I worked on the project a little bit, so I
Okay.
can share some. I did not work on the final thing, but I can definitely discuss it.
Great, excellent.
So if we're okay, well, we do have a couple more things to go through before taking up the applications, because we haven't done the minutes or public comment yet, right? Or did we?
Yes, but we haven't done that. And do you want approval of the agenda before we move on to the minutes? Pending Dan's comment, maybe?
Someone could move to amend the agenda at some point, or ask for a motion to move something up if things work out that way.
yeah, as an alternate, I don't know if I'm able to do that, but I would make that motion if I could.
Okay. Do we have somebody else who wants to make that motion?
Alternates can make a motion, right?
Generally, it would be the members, the 9 who are sitting. It wouldn't, yeah, because they're not voting on everything. They're usually brought in to vote when they're vote is required. We have a quorum, so I could show on the screen, but it shouldn't be too difficult to get someone to make that motion if they think it's a generally good idea.
So the idea is to move Silas up in the agenda. Is that
Yes,
what we're talking
before
about?
the application review.
Yeah, why don't we I move that we fit Silas in wherever appropriate when he gets here
And approve the agenda.
and approve the agenda with that change.
All right. Brad has motion. Do we have a second on that? Okay, I'll just second it. Megan, I'll second it. All right, thank you, Brad, for making the motion. Okay, so agenda has been approved with that note. And let's move on to the meeting minute of our last meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, I had one. Okay, I had one. Now we're gonna find it. One edit on page 3. So just a few lines up from the bottom of page 3, it says on the meeting minutes, Megan also clarified the project had a high benefit cost analysis. It says ration. I think you meant ratio. Just a simple edit. Other than that, they look good. So sorry, Brad, to interrupt. Do you want to make your motion again?
Yeah, so I'll move to approve the minutes with Megan's small edit.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Kristen. All right, so the minutes have been approved. Now we're moving on to public comments, right? So are there any comments unrelated, from the topics on our agenda today? Any other additional public comment that folks would like to speak to? Just looking for hands real quick. Okay, I don't see any at this point in time. So, did we have any budget adjustment requests?
There are no budget adjustments to report as part of this meeting.
Okay, all right, easy enough. So now we're on to the seating of members and alternates.
Sorry, I was just making sure that my email to Silas encouraging his attendance went through. So yes, this is the time on the agenda when we are saving a spot to recognize new reps or alternates when they are seated. The situation is pretty much as has been described so far. Remy has been an alternate serving the sector. They both moved over when Vermont River Conservancy went from being a rep of the land conservation organization sector to the watershed organization sector. So really, this is just the time where we recognize that Remy has the support of the sector. Getting into some of the nitty gritty, the clean water service providers are supposed to consult with WUV, WUV as the statewide organization that helps coordinate the identification of representatives of the watershed organization sector. Remy has the support of WUV through Lynn Munno. So we're basically announcing his elevation and the fact that I'm going to be changing where his name is listed on the spreadsheet and on the website as of today. And that's all that is. And I'm just thinking there are still some vacancies or vacancies in the alternates that we are working on. And we'll announce those as people are identified.
And Dean, just so folks who are newer are aware, do you want to mention what those vacancies are at this point in time?
I can do that in just 1 second. Happy to do that. Screen two. Too many screens here, but I was just going to share the website.
And while Dean's doing that, I just want to say thank you, Remy, for stepping into the position. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be joining the group. Over the past couple of years, I've been doing a lot of work in Lamoille County, so very familiar with a lot of the projects that have been going on, and very familiar with the funding formula of the clean water service providers. So yeah, very excited to be joining you all.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'm realizing that there needs to be an update both with the two Emilys as alternates. At this point, Peter's name is still as a placeholder for someone in the in the conservation district world to be the permanent rep. But really what I'm mostly interested in pointing out are the backups for the municipal sector. There's places where we need to have alternates.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dean. Appreciate that. Just in case folks have anybody in mind who might serve as an alternate for a municipal representative. All right, so we are moving on to election of vice chair, right?
And this is basically a do-over. So the process should be familiar to folks. It is an action item, and people have understood already that the vice chair acts in place of the chair when the chair is not able to attend. And this is something that's voted on by the 9 members. And this is a temporary assignment for whoever takes the position because of the way the bylaws are written. They say that that person fills out the remainder of the term, and we just happen to be only a couple of months away from the end of that term. And the nominations would be made on the fly here.
So, does anybody have anyone they would like to nominate for vice chair? I'm going to give folks a second to think about it there. Okay, if not, can I make a nomination?
You're the chair, you're running the show.
I can do anything, right? No.
Sorry, I
Go ahead, Mel.
yeah, I was wondering, is it possible to volunteer?
Yes,
I would like to volunteer.
absolutely. Thank you, Mel. Appreciate you volunteering. All right. Well, we have Mel has volunteered to serve as vice chair. And as Dean noted, so that would go until our annual meeting in July, and then we would just vote again. And if Mel is still interested at that point, that would be great too. Do we have anyone else who maybe wants to make a formal motion to elect Mel as vice chair? Or, yeah, vice chair of the Basin 7 Book?
One question. I don't mean to preempt you, Lauren, because I think your hand went up first. Are are you, well, I just would point out that Mel I have currently as one of the three alternates for Lauren, and I don't know uh, in one of the basins, um, Mel took over. And is this the basin? And my apologies, because I have Mel as the rep rather than you as the rep, Lauren?
What a great question there, Dean. So we had discussed her taking over in July as the voting member, but if it makes sense to just do that now and then let her be vice chair, that's fine with me. I don't want to be vice chair. So if that's however you want to do this, we can do this.
My advice, Megan, would be that um, yes, something like the following occur, that the BWIC decide that pending confirmation of the conservation district sector. That basically means I ask Lauren and Emily and the folks at Orleans, are you good with this? And now they have already said that they're good with Mel being the rep as of July. So it's just an administrative thing. So pending confirmation of that, for the purposes of the meeting today, the body's going to accept this switch, and then you would act on Mel's volunteering for the position. And I would encourage someone to make the motion rather than Mel having to say, I volunteer. It would just be someone moving to appoint Mel for the remainder of the term, if that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. So I guess then I'll make a motion pending confirmation of the how did you want to say it, Dina? Pending confirmation of
I think it's step one is this is kind of like an extension of the earlier seating of new representatives agenda item. So step one is that pending confirmation of the districts, Mel is now the representative and Lauren is the alternate. That's just taken care of. And
Okay.
then step two is someone making a motion that Mel, now the tentative representative or to be confirmed representative, be the vice chair for the remainder of the term, and then get the second on that.
Okay. So let's start with the first part. So I'll motion to say pending confirmation of the conservation districts, that Mel is now taking the place of Lauren as the primary representative. Do we have a second on that action?
Dean, I'm officially a voting member now, right?
Yes, sir, you are.
All right, I will second that.
All right, thank you, Remy. Okay, so now Mel is the primary representative, filling one of the conservation district seats on the Basin Council. So we need a motion now to elect Mel as the vice chair of the Basin 7 WIC Council. We have a motion.
Did we have to vote on the switch? We had a motion and a second, but we didn't vote.
Okay. Sure. Yep. So all in favor of Mel serving as the primary conservation district representative on the Basin Council, taking Lauren Weston's place. All in favor, say aye. Okay. Any opposed?
I think I abstain. I'm not sure.
No, you don't have to.
I don't have to. Okay, then I'm in favor.
Okay, great.
It's just your last act as the rep. So you went out with a bang, Lauren.
Okay. All right, so we voted on Mel taking primary position that Lauren used to fill as a representative on the Basin Council, serving the conservation districts. And so now we need to make a motion for Mel to be the vice chair.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All right. So all in favor of having Mel be the new vice chair. And again, this term will go until our July annual meeting, and then we can re-elect as appropriate. So all in favor say aye. Or raise your hand. Okay. And do any opposed? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mel, for volunteering and stepping up to the plate. And congratulations, you are the new vice chair.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate your support and joining us as vice chair. Thank you. All right. So let's see. So with that said, yes, we're on to the nominating committee item of the agenda.
And if I can jump in, I will just let Silas know that, yes, Silas, we are going to take you up before the application, so you did not arrive early in vain. This agenda item is a little bit quirky, but it comes up. The Basin Council's bylaws say, generally speaking, that, no, they don't say generally speaking, they say, and I'm summarizing, that the chair would create a nominating committee at the meeting before the annual meeting to assist in the process of identifying chair and vice chair. So that would be something that would be the default. At this time, the chair would say, I'm going to create a nominating committee. It's got, I'm going to ask person A and person B to create the nominating committee and have their slate received at the annual meeting. But that seems somewhat formal. So the bylaws also say that if the BWIC has a good feeling about how things will work at the annual meeting, you can say, nah, chair, you don't have to create a nominating committee. So that's the central question. Given the way things are right now, do you think it would be a good idea, or is it not necessary for the chair to create a nominating committee? That's essentially what goes on.
Any thoughts on that? So in the past, we haven't had a formal nominating committee. We've kind of just continued to vote by, floor vote. I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts on that.
I can throw a motion out and then get it seconded and you could discuss it, but I would move to forego the nominating committee, the formation of a nominating committee.
Okay, thank you, Brad. So we have a motion on that. Does anybody want to second that?
This is Remy. I would second Brad's motion.
Okay, thank you, Remy. All right. And again, the motion was to forego a nominating committee. Just don't feel that it's necessary at this point in time. So, all in favor of that action, please raise your hand or say aye. Raise the hands. I guess that's the easiest.
Can I
thing
vote
to do.
now? Sorry, just wanted to check.
Yeah, you can vote. You can vote, Mel. Yeah, absolutely. And I just realized I should be voting too. So, okay, all in favor of the action. We'll let Dean get the hands here. Okay. Okay. All right. Did you get everybody's hands, Dean? All right. Anybody opposed to that motion? No. Okay. All right. So I think we can move on to Silas's presentation, right? We'll let Silas present first on, we have Forest Road, or sorry, yeah, Forest Roads and Trails presentation by Silas. And I'm gonna let Silas take it away. So you're up.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And thanks, Dean, for the invite. I'm Silas Rainville, watershed forestry specialist of Forest Parks and Rec. I guess just as a caveat off the bat, this is mostly Karen Bates' presentation, watershed planner with DEC. She couldn't be here. So I'm going to do, well, it's her presentation with a few of my slides. So I'm going to do her sections as well to the best of my abilities. So I will just share my screen here once I figure out how to do that in Zoom. Dean, I'm getting a message saying that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Yes, and I should be able to authorize that. Let's see. I usually get a little flag that says, okay, hold on. Oh my. What's going on here? Nora, do you have any thoughts on what?
I'm not a host, so I can't.
Um,
Oh, I can
so
change it. Participants. You want to try now, Silas?
Sure. Let's see. Oh, there we go. How about that? Folks can see that?
yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right.
Silas, you are in, yeah, great presentation mode now. We can
Okay.
see your notes though.
Interesting. Let's see. How about that?
Same thing.
No, same thing.
I think there's a present in Teams thing in the upper right. I don't know if that's what you're clicking. Like if you go back to the slideshow.
Where are you seeing that, Remy?
If you click End Slideshow, up at the top, sort of near the top left,
Oh, yeah.
End Slideshow.
Yep. Present in Teams.
Yeah, try that. Oh.
Just go to where it says slideshow at the top, and then usually you can say from the beginning, like the top of your document screen there. Yeah, you can click that tab that says slideshow. And then, yeah, from the beginning. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, so you folks are seeing my slides here.
Yeah. It's fine. We'll just continue. It still shows the notes, but I say just continue at this point.
Yeah.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Well, this is frustrating because they aren't my notes. Let me see here. There must be a way of.
Maybe display setting? Yeah.
Do you have more than one monitor, Silas?
I
There.
do.
There you
There you
go.
There we
go.
go.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Claris.
You were getting
Claris is
there.
always so helpful. Okay. Um, Fantastic. Well, sorry about that. You would think I would know how to run this software by now. It's much simpler in Teams, I will say. But so yeah, like I said, I'm Silas Rainville, watershed forestry specialist with Forest Parks and Rec. This is a kind of a co-presentation. Karen Bates and I put together the first half. 2/3 is really, her material. I'm going to do my best to kind of do it justice. And what we're covering today is the forest project type for forest road and skid trail improvements for phosphorus credits. And so I guess my final caveat on this presentation is that I know there's a lot of you kind of in the audience who have heard at least a version of this presentation once, in some cases probably twice. So if this is all review for some of you, I do apologize. So what we're talking about is the forest project, QUIP project type. And so this is, a formula grant, clean water project type, as well as a block grant. The formula grant project type is, available for funding through the QUIST in the Lake Champlain and Memphremagog basins. The block grant is available statewide, funded through some different organizations. So why is this a good project type in the Lamoille Basin? Well, like much of Vermont, the Lamoille Basin is heavily forested, 76% to be specific. And if you look at this map, kind of the sub-watersheds of all the major tributaries are also heavily forested. And of that forest cover, the majority of it is actively managed, right? So a high percentage of that forest in the basin is enrolled in current use or the use value appraisal program. And as many folks probably know, UVA requires long-term forestry and generally active management. Enrollment in current use also requires implementation of the AMPs, Vermont's acceptable management practices, which we'll get into a little bit more. So all that to say, there's a legacy of forestry and active management in the basin, as well as, kind of an impetus for landowners to put the AMPs in place on their land base, which is what we're trying to do with this project type. This is also, generally speaking, a pretty cost-effective project type. This actually, this table here is from, I think, an older draft cost rate methodology. I think it may be updated in the latest version. So, in the column that we have highlighted, cost per kilogram phosphorus reduced per year comes out to just under $19,000. We've done some projects recently in the past 6 months where the cost per kilogram is significantly less than that, particularly when the project type is focused on skid trails rather than truck roads or larger stream crossings. And in those cases, the cost per kilogram is much closer to like riparian buffer restoration, that $5,000 to $8,000 range per kilogram. And Dean can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of the recent projects have been fairly attractive from a cost perspective from the QUISP's print standpoint. So as we were getting this project type off the ground over the past 2 years, we developed what we call the RTEI survey, Road and Trail Erosion Inventory. So this is a Survey 123 application based off kind of a platform and a methodology we used on state lands. So over the past 5 years, Forest Parks and Rec has conducted a road erosion inventory of all forest roads on state land, divvying up all of those roads into 100-meter segments, and then basically assessing them based on municipal roads general permit inventory framework, just adapted to forest roads. So essentially what we did for the RTEI survey is we kind of took that basic platform and then applied it to private lands. And the major difference being that we can now assess skid trails, not just forest truck roads. And we can also conduct the mapping in the field. So for our state lands inventory, basically all of those 100-meter segments were pre-mapped by our GIS specialist at the Agency of Natural Resources. With the RTEI survey, we can go out in the field and actually stream those segments, get location data for the segments, conduct the survey, and then basically upload that to our database with that spatial data as well as the survey scores. And it's been a pretty successful tool so far. So as everyone on this call well knows, that we have some accountability requirements established by Vermont's Clean Water Act, Act 64, which also happens to be, the piece of legislation that revised Vermont's AMPs, which this practice type is based off of. Transparency under Act 76. Then, of course, basin-specific reporting show how Vermont's regulatory and non-regulatory programs are achieving progress towards phosphorus reduction targets in Champlain and Memphremagog TMDLs. And so this is basically our accounting methodology for this project type. We have a baseline phosphorus loading rate for every segment that we inventory using the RTEI. First of all, every segment needs to be hydrologically connected, meaning it drains to or bisects water of the state or is within 100 feet of water of the state, or a segment can be upslope of and drained to another hydro-connected segment. So we have this baseline phosphorus loading rate in kilograms per meter per year. We multiply that times the segment length. These are generally 100-meter segments. And then we get our phosphorus load. The phosphorus load is then multiplied by our phosphorus reduction efficiency. And that efficiency is based off of the scoring in the survey itself. The efficiencies are 80% and 40% reductions. The 40% is associated with partially meets and bringing that segment up to the fully meet standard. And then 80% would be does not meet, brought to the fully meet standard. Obviously, if the segment fully meets at the time of the initial inventory, there's no reduction efficiency to apply. And based on that efficiency, we get our estimated phosphorus reduction. So when planning out these projects, after doing the initial inventory, we've been using DEC's interim phosphorus reduction calculator. One caveat here is that when I think it was version 1.2 was released, of the calculator was released with this project type, it made these projects look very attractive. I guess, very cost effective. The calculator has since been revised. There was an initial error basically with the loading rates associated with soil types in the previous version. So basically, the phosphorus reductions have been reduced a bit with that update, but I still think it is quite an attractive project type. So, basically how we get our reduction estimates is we're taking the segments that we assess with the survey and entering the road and trail type, the length of the individual segments, the segment score prior to restoration, and then post-restoration score, which generates our efficiency, and that spits out phosphorus reductions, which is how we do our project planning. And so now I'll just talk, I guess, really briefly about the AMPs. And again, these are the standards that we're using to address these erosion issues in the woods. So really the AMPs were practices designed for active forest management. They're what we put in place before, during, and after logging or harvesting, basically to protect those water resources in the woods. They're designed to minimize erosion, maintain stream flows, protect forest buffers, and prevent discharges of sediment, which is generally, pollutant of concern during logging operations and in the woods. But there's also practices to address petroleum products and potentially other hazardous materials associated with logging. And again, those pieces of kind of forest infrastructure that we're applying these practices to are truck roads and skid trails primarily, as well as stream crossings, but also riparian areas or forested buffers and log landings to a lesser extent. So I guess just kind of putting the AMPs into perspective in the context of these kind of clean water restoration projects. Generally in Vermont, logging occurs on 15 to 20-year intervals, depending on the management type and the land base, but typically somewhere's in there. And the practices we put in place following harvesting are intended to really hold up over the long term, but in some cases they need to be maintained, right, to kind of protect that resource over the long term. And factors that can kind of reduce the effectiveness of the AMPs that we've put in place, after years and years include, the potentially really steep slopes, highly erodible soils, as well as just recreational use of roads and trails or access to the woods for other reasons, as well as, some of the storm events that we saw in 2023 and 2024. There were cases where we did put the AMPs in place correctly, and we saw some of those practices kind of bypassed or washed out due to the storm events. So that's worst case scenario. The AMPs do really need to be maintained over the long term, but Vermont also has a long history of forest management and harvesting that happened 30, 40, 50 years ago may not have followed kind of some of the more modern resource protection practices that we now have. And they certainly weren't following AMP standards. So in those cases, often what we see are these legacy issues, as in the photo in the slide, right? Kind of, this is textbook gully erosion down a former skid trail. And what we see in these cases is when these legacy issues kind of progress over the long term, a feature like this kind of eventually becomes an intermittent stream, essentially, and really reduces the forest's ability to act as a sponge and soak up that rainwater and stormwater and recharge our groundwater. So these are really the issues that we're trying to mitigate, and the features we're trying to restore, less so issues associated with active management, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. So this being a QIP project type, there's the non-regulatory requirement. In the context of forestry projects, that means there's kind of a 3-year post-harvest statute of limitations, so to speak. So essentially, if there's an AMP concern or an erosion issue taking place within 3 years of an active harvest on a land base, and that issue is associated with that harvesting activity, well, that issue falls within FPR's kind of regulatory jurisdiction, and we might take enforcement on that sort of issue. And we certainly would require the landowner to fix the problem, using their own funds. So what we're really targeting with this project type are these legacy concerns, which we see on the landscape from, past harvesting many years ago. Another important point is that properties enrolled in current use are eligible for this funding type. Like I mentioned, current use properties are required to have the AMPs in place to the maximum practicable extent, is the language we use. In reality, there are just a lot of parcels enrolled in the program where the AMPs, are not implemented, and that's just kind of the reality of what we have in Vermont. So, assuming that the AMP concern on a UVA enrolled property is not due to harvesting within the past 3 years, that parcel would still be eligible for QIP funding. Once again, if the issue is related to harvesting, falling within that 3-year and a regulatory window, would be ineligible. So roads and trails must be primarily for forest management purposes. We can't use this practice type to convert a road or trail to a new use. So, we can't take a skid trail and turn it into a single track mountain bike trail. Limited recreation by landowners, on the forest access infrastructure is acceptable. And, repairing haul roads and access trails and sugar bushes is also now eligible based on new guidance from DEC. That was kind of a question for a little bit, but we're excited to hopefully see some sugar makers utilize this funding. We'll touch briefly on the definitions of roads and trails as defined in the road and trail erosion inventory. And again, when we're assessing segments using the survey, this is kind of the first question that comes up is, are we looking at a truck road or a skid trail? So a truck road we define as running from a public road to a log landing. It's designed for vehicular traffic, right? So generally log trucks, passenger vehicles, and their primary use should be forest management, right? Transporting forest products from a log landing to a buyer or processor. And they can be either temporary or permanent. So either open year round for forest management activities or closed out following harvest. And so what is not a truck road in the context of this project type? So private residential roads and driveways that provide access to permanent dwellings. And we define permanent dwellings as, a house or a camp with a septic system. That would not be considered a truck road. And not that it's not important to address, potentially erosion or stormwater concerns on those road types, but that's not what these projects are intended to do. So if we take a look at the map here, kind of the green checked line leading up to the house site is fairly obviously a driveway. Beyond that, the purple trail or road, rather, leading up to the landing, right, no longer provides access to the house site. We would consider that an eligible truck road. Beyond the landing site, the red checked line would be a skid trail, which we'll define now. So skid trails are designed for logging equipment, again, to transport those forest products from the woods to the landing site. So they run from the log landing, where products are yarded, to the stump where the tree itself is cut. They're not designed for vehicular access. They're really, these are meant for logging equipment, whether that be skidders or forwarders, as well as felling machinery, such as feller bunchers or processors. And they're generally built with native material rather than gravel. And we're typically draining or diverting water on skid trails using water bars, so surface diversion structures. And stream crossings on skid trails tend to be temporary, so following harvesting, we're taking those out and stabilizing and closing stream crossings. Some more photos of skid trails here. Pretty basic stuff. You see one, you know one. You probably would not want to take your car or your truck, for that matter, down one of these. So again, what is not a skid trail? Well, recreational trails that are just not compatible with forestry equipment, like the single track mountain bike trail we have here, kind of a narrow walking paths or ATV trails. If the trail is designed solely for that type of use, it's not a skid trail, and it wouldn't be eligible for this project type. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the practices that we're putting in place to bring these trail segments that we're assessing using the survey up to AMP standards. So again, on skid trails, it's pretty basic stuff. We're installing surface diversion structures really to break up any concentrated flow on skid trails. These are, linear features in the woods, typically on fairly steep slopes, steeper than what you would find most, a road on. And we're trying to divert any overland flow, prevent channelization, generally using water bars like we discussed. In some cases, if there's active gully erosion or legacy issues, we'll be grading and shaping that trail section, stabilizing and properly sizing stream crossings. Again, in most cases, stream crossings on skid trails are temporary rather than permanent. And in some cases, we're going to be closing out sections of skid trails permanently if they can't be brought up to standards. So, an example there might be a trail that falls on 25 or 30% slope or runs through the forested buffer as defined by the AMPs. That simply, no practices you put in place are going to bring it up to the standards we have defined. So we may close out that trail permanently and reroute it. Again, quit practices will not pay for rerouting, but they would be able to fund permanent closure of a trail section like that. Similar practices on truck roads, right? On permanent truck roads, generally those that have like a gravel base, we're typically not using surface diversion structures to drain water off those. We'll be using the actual road profile itself. So in that case, we may be recrowning and grading the road surface as well as the shoulders. If there's active or legacy erosion, we may be, installing new road surface material. And oftentimes, again, if we're shedding water off the road profile, that road may have a ditch, and there too, we're trying to break up any concentrated flow within the ditch typically using cross-drain culverts based on the standards outlined in the AMPs. We'll be armoring those culvert outlets, and lastly, we'll be correctly sizing stream crossing structures. Here too, on permanent truck roads, oftentimes there will be permanent structures, which can get quite expensive. I guess that's a larger discussion. On temporary truck roads, as is the case with skid trails, we're oftentimes removing those crossing structures once a harvest is complete. So, a forest project, a clean water project on a temporary truck road might involve, installing cross-drain culverts, repairing a ditch, or it may be something similar to what we might do on a skid trail, that is installing surface diversion structures like water bars or broad-based dips. And if there's, a stream crossing structure on the road itself that doesn't meet our standards, we may be removing that permanently rather. And at the next harvesting entry, potentially the contractor or the landowner will install a temporary stream crossing structure, to cross that waterway for harvesting purposes. And so, lastly, just some of the stream crossing improvements we might put in place for this type of project. If we have failed stream crossings, we're going to ideally be stabilizing those. You can see in the picture here, this was a failed culvert. I believe on a skid trail, actually. We don't love culverts on skid trails. This got removed. Then in the lower picture, you can see we seeded and mulched the stream approaches and stabilized the channel itself. Undersized structures removed. We're going to try to replace those with structures sized according to the drainage area. That's all contained within the acceptable management practices. There's several tables defining culvert sizes as well as bridge sizing according to the drainage area of the stream that we're crossing. Road and trail and ditch drainage, we try to disconnect from the stream itself. So, say on a skid trail, we want to disconnect that overland flow by installing a water bar about 25 feet from top of bank to prevent, any sediment discharge that might be running down the trail itself from reaching the stream and diverting that onto the forest floor. And lastly, if we are installing culverts, whether on a truck road or in some cases on a skid trail, we're going to try to armor those inlets and outlets, stabilize the culverts in addition to properly sizing them to make sure those culverts are resilient over the long term. So this is a fun brochure that I think I want to say Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission put together on this project type. It kind of nicely summarizes what we're trying to do here. And then lastly, just some resources for the Lamoille Basin. If you have any questions on the project type, certainly feel free to reach out to me or my supervisor, Dave Wilcox, who's the state's watershed forester. Claire Madden with DEC's tracking and accounting team is also a really great resource, as well as Karen Bates. And so, as folks are starting to think about planning these projects and reaching out to landowners, we really want, to maintain a direct line of contact between, the folks who are doing the work and those who are, providing technical assistance to forest landowners kind of day in and day out. So we're really encouraging folks to reach out to county foresters for any leads in terms of landowners who might be interested in these project types. And we've also been kind of in conversation with the county foresters, trying to educate them on what we're trying to do here, just letting them know that this resource is available for folks who have AMP concerns, but potentially don't have the funding to come to address them and kind of come back into compliance with the UVA program. I will say, Emily Potter is the Lamoille County Forester. I believe, there may be a couple other county foresters who fall within the Lamoille Basin. For example, Charlie Hancock, Franklin County Forester, has Cambridge, and David Nunnery in Orleans County may also have a portion of the basin. Regardless, depending on where you're working, I would take a look at the county forester map. I would definitely encourage folks to reach out to them. Also, if anyone wants more information on the AMPs, certainly check out FPR's website. And we also have additional resources on the RKEI survey itself. We have a user manual we put together with kind of, how to step-by-step instructions for both downloading the survey as well as, assessing segments in the field. And we also put together a webinar last spring that kind of gives an overview of a lot of the same material, just in greater depth. So I believe that's all I have.
Thank you, Silas. That was a great presentation, very informative. Appreciate you joining us today with this. Does anybody have any questions for Silas? I see Mel. Mel, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Silas. This is something we discussed at our last site visit together, but I was wondering if you had an answer. In that 3-year regulatory window, is there a difference between commercial logging and someone just doing, like a landowner doing thinning for their own purposes? And like, what is the scale that would reach that line, if so?
Yeah. Thanks, Mel. So that is a good question, and I was able to discuss it with folks, and I guess it probably should have occurred to me on site. But so, if there is an AMP concern related to harvesting, it's kind of irrelevant whether it was a private contractor or the landowner themselves who was doing the harvesting, right? It still kind of falls under our jurisdiction, and it's a regulatory issue. So unfortunately, right, if that issue was related to that harvesting, again, and that's the key, I think we would have to say it would be ineligible for the project. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know.
Yep.
Remy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think that may have answered my question as well. It's kind of in relation to Mel's. But I guess more generally, I guess could you describe a little bit more? Like, it seems like this funding is designed to address more of like the quote unquote legacy issues. And so where's the line between, what would classify more of like a legacy issue and what would be related to a harvest?
Yeah, this is kind of a slug answer, but I guess I would just tie it back to that three-year window, right?
Yeah.
Really, I guess when we're discussing legacy issues, what kind of pops into my mind is kind of those scars on the landscape, right? Where, whether it be a skid trail or a truck road, the actual, access infrastructure itself may have regenerated, but the erosion is still there, right? And so, for example, on a lot of state land, we see that where the land base was harvested really heavily in the 80s or 90s. No practices were put in place, and then the landowner shifted that, or sold the ownership to the state. And we see it all over the place, right? Just like these erosive features that are turning into intermittent streams very quickly. That's kind of what pops into my head with legacy issues. Really, for the purposes of the project type, I think it's just anything, further back than that three-year window. So.
Thank you.
See Joanne.
Yeah, I guess when you explain what a legacy is, how you just explained it, it doesn't seem to fit with a 3-year window. Legacy to me means older than when the AMPs were developed. And that was, 2015. And now, so how did you come up with a 3-year post-harvest window for definition of a legacy? It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So actually, I will say the AMPs were originally put in place in 85, but they didn't get revised until Act 64 in 2015. But that's fair. And that is a question, frankly, or DEC, because they kind of devise the parameters of the project type. Now they may have been in conversation with FPR's private land program, and yeah, I guess that's something I should know. It may have to. I'm less on the enforcement side of things within the watershed forestry team, but we may have had that definition internally of within 3 years. That's like an active harvest window. That's when a job is still active, and beyond that, it's again beyond that statute of limitations. And they may have just used that and shifted it to. I guess that's probably what they did, right? They took that regulatory definition and applied it to, eligibility for a non-regulatory project type. But like I said, that's just what pops into my head in terms of legacy issues, is those, really long-term erosive features on the landscape. But in this context, it's just anything beyond 3 years. Yeah.
Dean.
Does that help? A little
That
bit.
is really helpful. Thank you. Dean has a question.
Yeah, I have lots of questions, but I have to winnow them down. Silas, could you explain the differences between meeting the AMPs and closing? How would it look different if you went out there and the existing skid trail was going to be just improved to meet the AMPs versus closed? Would it look different? And then who's going to decide on closure versus not closure? And then how should closing be monitored?
Yeah, so I think that was 3 questions, Dean. Well, it's the first. Okay, so the first one was the difference between typical or whatever standard AMP implementation and permanent closure or naturalization of a trail section. Is that right?
Yeah. It's like your slides included that, in some situations the prescription, the project in essence would be closure. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around, will that look different?
Yeah,
And
sure.
and how will we monitor it? And yeah, anyway, I'll stop.
Right. So this is something we've been batting around with tracking and accounting and watershed planning teams. The problem is we don't have technical resources developed at kind of illustrating or defining what permanent closure should look like. For the time being, there's the assumption that if you put the AMPs in place, it's permanently closed. That being said, what we're encouraging folks, whatever the practices may be, kind of intensifying them if they are permanently closing out a trail segment. So for example, or a road segment. So for example, if you're putting in water bars, well, you would install them to the AMP spacing, but the AMPs require water bars to be 12 inches deep at minimum and 12 inches high, both above and below the road surface. We would say double or triple that, make them as large as you can. Potentially scarify the soil if this is kind of a really old trail and we want to kind of induce some natural regeneration, trees going again within that trail profile. We may encourage folks to scarify the soil, potentially even drop trees within the trail itself or at the access your entrance of a trail to prevent unauthorized access. So again, just kind of taking those basic AMP practices and intensifying them is what we're encouraging folks to do. What we really need to kind of develop a technical guide for what permanent closure or naturalization looks like, and we're not there yet, basically. So I already forgot your second question, Dean.
That's okay. Because something that you said is something I would just like to have clarification on, and maybe we don't worry about that. But You said there's an assumption that if you put the AMPs in place, it's permanently closed. And to me, one of the issues with this project type is there are some really fuzzy lines between like the secondary use for recreation and things like that. And the whole situation would be helped if there were bright lines. And to me, subjectively, this situation would be helped if when people are talking about this project type, we are able to say to folks who are thinking about using public funds to do this work, if we can boil it down and say, yes, if you're installing these AMPs, you are, the assumption is that it's going to be permanently closed.
Mhm.
But I realize no one likes to have things locked in, and I'm worried about some of the kind of monitoring and sustaining of these practices over time. But it seems like to me, and maybe this is reflecting tensions between forest parks and DEC, but it seems like it would be simplified if we were all on the same page that when these AMPs are put in, then the assumption is that it's going to be permanently closed versus something else where, well, 20, 30 years comes along. Yes, it is going to be used again for that purpose, but it would just be helpful to me if there's a bright line.
So a bright line in terms of recreational access or access for other purposes, or AMPs are put in place and then there's the expectation that when that next harvesting interval comes back up, there's going to be another entry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking, is my concern mainly about recreation or things more generally? And I would say I'm not concerned necessarily with the recreational impact. I think that it could happen in forest places closer to urbanized areas where they're going to be more likely to have a density of people out on their mountain bikes and things like that. No, I guess I'm just talking about it more generally. Like it seems like it would be helpful again if we're on the same page about what these projects really mean. Is it something that we should be looking at through the lens of like a 5 year to 10-year window, or is it like you were saying? Because that kind of surprised me that you said that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's well. So I guess I would personally be less concerned with active management or harvesting that's going to use the road or trail that's been restored to AMP standards 10 years down the line, because the assumption is, and again it's an assumption, and I guess if you're still within the operations and maintenance window, then the landowner would have to be working with the QUISP on during the harvest. But the assumption is that the logging contractor is going to put the AMPs back into place once the harvesting is done. Every segment should still fully meet, right? Once that job is closed out. I would actually I'm actually much more concerned about recreational use on these segments, on these roads and trails that have been improved using this project type, just day in and day out, over the course of all year long, essentially, because most of the privately owned woodlots in Vermont are multiple use. I think that's well known, and frankly, hiking or very active mountain bike activity can be super, super detrimental to these practices. I've seen water bars beaten down just from foot traffic. So that would be the bigger concern for me, rather than another harvesting entry 10 or 15 years down the line. Now, how we're going to differentiate between segments that are permanently closed or naturalized versus those that are just brought back up to standard and we get phosphorus credit for the life of the project type, that's a question for DEC. I guess I'm not sure, but Does that help at all, Dean?
Yeah, it does. And thank you. And I'm mindful of the time, so I want to step back and say you don't. We'll talk more at
Yeah.
follow-ups.
Yep. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Silas. And I just want to ask if there's any other questions before we consider moving on to our next agenda item. Really appreciate your time, Silas. It's very
Yeah.
informative.
Perfect.
So
Thank
thank
you,
you very
folks.
much.
All right, and feel free to reach out if anyone has any additional questions.
Great.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Silas.
All right. So we are on to our application review. And as Dean mentioned, one of the applications was withdrawn per request of the applicant. So the one that we are reviewing still today is the Wolcott Town Forest Road and Trails project, which was proposed by the Lamoille County Conservation District. And I know that Emily Lughart said she would speak to this if Sarah's not with us.
I believe it's just me.
All right.
Like I said, I did not work on this final part of the application, so my overview might be a little bare bones, and I will do my best to answer any additional questions you all may have. But this is a project again in the Wolcott Town Forest for the implementation phase for forest trails and roads. So these were kind of a network of old logging roads that were experiencing erosion. And that sediment was making its way eventually down to the Lamoille River and then a couple additional tributaries. The overview work of the project, it's about 5,800 feet of forest road that will be brought up to AMP standards. And that's including both closure and reclamation. And that's like just overview, basic grading and shaping, and then heavily eroded grading and shaping, some coarse woody material removal from some of those areas. And then at the end, reseeding roads with conservation mix. There's also a few stream crossings that I believe some of the banks may be reshaped and then removing any, I guess, woody material that was put in the streams to aid in those crossings. And then at the end, those areas will be mulched. And they don't plan on putting in additional like stream crossing material. That's just going to be sort of repaired, I guess. And then the screen showed it, but the total, it should result in a total of 3 kilograms per year of phosphorus reduction. For the budget estimated cost was about $41,781.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. And Dean, I don't know if you want to screen share the map of this project that was with the application and kind of give
Yes,
your staff
I
notes if
I
you'd
was
like
just
to.
I was just trying to. So, yes, this is material from the meeting packet. And as was mentioned, this is a request for roughly $42,000. And that is the whole costs because it's an implementation project. It's a project that would be implemented this year, which is good. Would allow the phosphorus credits, which are coming in at over 3 kilograms, to be booked this year in 2026. You were asking about a map, and so this is one of the maps that was included with the application. I don't know, Emily, if there's anything that you want to say as I'm sharing this. One of the things that I might have asked Silas with more time is I'm curious about this project type and economies of scale and whether or not there's a minimum number of feet or portions of a mile that would make sense. But in any event, the application did have the number of feet involved here, and I'm not remembering it off the top of my head, but the segments are listed on this map. And again, if there's anything that you wanted to add, Emily.
I think the feet's about, it should be about 5,870 or 80.
Yeah, so it's a pretty substantial amount of work. Letter of support from the Conservation Commission and the county forester, who was one of the people who Silas had mentioned. One of the things to say about the project: 3 kilograms, $42,000 roughly, and that's 13,000 or 13.5 per kilogram, which is a relatively good cost effectiveness for a project of any type, essentially. I don't know if there was something else that people had seen in the packet that they wanted called out, but
Yeah, are there any other questions for Emily about this proposed project?
Emily, I think you mentioned this, but I maybe forgot. Is the project proposing to close these forest roads or improve them, or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. Some will be closed, the stream crossings will be closed, but a few areas will be reclaimed. I think just there are no plans to really log, I believe, in the future at this point, and I think there's a certain number of years that they aren't allowed to log, but they are used. I think some of the roads are used recreationally.
Gotcha. And so those segments will continue to be used as recreational trails.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
It does say in the letter from Emily and Gordon, 3 years.
Okay.
Remain for 3 years, close to the transport of forest products for 3 years after reclamation.
Emily, it seemed like a pretty accelerated timeline. I guess that was one thing that struck me. Is there, I mean, it doesn't matter either way, but do you think there's any chance that this work may not happen this fall and it might have to be next spring, or?
I think there's the couple like review pieces that we're still waiting for, like we've submitted. But we're working with Luke Hart, forester that works with the Walcott Town Forest, and he's eager to go. So I think very much the hope is to get it done this year, and he seemed confident that they would be able to find a contractor at that time. I guess some of it is potentially weather dependent in the fall, but
okay, great.
Who owns the land? Is it the town? Town owns the land?
Yeah.
I just haven't seen anything from them here. They're on board with this, obviously.
Yes, I think there was, I don't know if it was included in that packet, but
I don't see anything from the town here.
There was a letter of support that might have been obtained.
No.
I mean, they voted on it at some point. I do know that there was
At a
support.
select board meeting or something.
Yeah.
There was a letter in there in the packet somewhere.
I can't seem to find it though.
Yeah, what I think Brad is distinguishing between is something signed by the person who's the chair of the Conservation Board or Conservation Commission and the Select Board, because the Conservation Commission wouldn't speak for the town per se. It would have to be from the Select Board. So am I right, Brad? And that's what you're zeroing in on?
Yeah, unless they have some kind of a statutory authority on this.
Right. And for
I doubt.
and for a project like this, there will need to be the site access agreement. It's going to have to happen pretty quickly, and the the QUISP would not be satisfied for the signature to come only from the Conservation Commission. It would have to be someone who's, chair of the select board or someone who's authorized by a vote of the select board. So that's the check on the town approval. And I hadn't had reason to worry that the Conservation Commission chair and the county forester were going too far out on a limb, but we knew that there was always that as a way to make sure.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was a vote at the select board meeting, Emily. Do you
I
know when that
believe,
was?
see, I didn't, this is maybe where I'm failing with my knowledge. I believe there was discussion, and I would have to dig back through emails, but I believe there was some kind of vote that was documented, but I would need to follow up with Sarah.
Can I
Okay.
jump in?
Yes.
Yeah.
So your letter does say that the Walcott Select Board affirm their support. And I will tell you that the steward, because we're doing the same project in Hardwick, the stewardship committee has been granted ability to speak for the town on things in that town forest. So they're covered without an official vote yet.
Right. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, and I just know from being a Wolcott resident that the Wolcott Forest Committee reports back on a regular basis to the select board as well. So they have a pretty clear line of communication. Any other questions? I see Joanne. Joanne, did you have a question?
Yeah, I know the land, I believe the land has been conserved with Northern Waters Land Trust, is it? Or Northern Rivers, one or the other. And I'm just wondering if there's anything in the conservation easement language that would cover this, or you would need to get permission for part of the easement and doing any of this work.
That did not, from the conversations that I had, I don't know if that was discussed. But I imagine between the forester and the select board, that should have come up if that was an issue. But Sarah, again, may have a better sense of what the answer to that question is.
Again, that's in the letter. It does say that the Northern Rivers Land Trust talked to and affirmed. So I think it's pretty well documented, I think.
Thank you, Kristen.
All right. Any other questions for Emily in this proposed project? Yeah, thank you for pointing out in the letter. Yep, I remember seeing that as well in the letter. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands at this point in time. Okay, and Dean, you didn't have any other questions for Emily from the staff perspective, or?
I don't have other questions for Emily. Like I was saying, in terms of the uh, more formal support of the landowner in the form of the town and the select board, that is the sort of thing we would have been buttoning up as part of the signature on the site access agreement. And that's going to be one of the first things that will be addressed along with the task award that would make the money available. I would just say more generally, and this is something that we could touch on now or perhaps as part of the next agenda item, we are going to try to more regularly share the information about the projects that have been awarded funds by the Basin Council or by the QUISP with the endorsement of the Basin Council. And the thing that I've said about a year ago or more is that the QUISP has sign task awards for projects that have a large implementation cost. And so we will have to make sure that we're very, more selective. The thing about this particular project is that it's got a relatively good cost effectiveness. It would be going to implementation and those phosphorus credits would be booked. So I'm not feeling like it deserves um, any kind of flashing yellow light in terms of quest for staff support for it. And I don't want to hold up the vote, but if people wanted to see that kind of information now before voting, then there is a online dashboard that Nora has created that she could share, or we could let you consider this and vote, and then she could share that a little bit later to give people a big picture on where the dollars are committed. Oh, and I see, yeah, new people joining the meeting. So anyway, do people want to have that larger context for the QUISP funding before voting, or would you be wanting to see it after?
Any preference on that? No, I'm seeing some heads nodding. Thinking we could probably go either way on that. Why don't we, since this is fresh in our minds right now, why don't we go to a vote on this proposed project? So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Walcott Roads and Walcott Town Forest Road and Trails project. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
This is Remy. I'll make a motion to approve the Wolcott Town and Forest Road project.
Thank you, Remy. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Kristen. I will second.
Okay, Kristen seconded the motion. So all in favor of approving the Wolcott Town Forest Road and Trails project, please raise your hands. Say aye by raising your hand. I think it's the easiest way for Dean to capture.
And I would just point out that at this point, it looks like Mel has left the meeting, and Dorothy, you are now the voter.
Yes, yeah.
And,
Mel
and
had
I
to
and
head
I
out.
didn't see when you had come in, but yes, okay,
Just a
that's
couple minutes ago.
all right.
Okay. Excellent. So did you get everybody's hands, Dean?
There were five, I believe, and I'm
Okay.
gonna just ask Nora to confirm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Anyone opposed to approving this project? Okay, I'm not seeing any opposition. Okay, so it seems like everybody is in favor of approving the Walcott Town Forest Road and Trails project. So congratulations, Emily, and congrats to Sarah as well, who helped pull together the application. And good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Good. All right. So we have updates and conclusions left, I believe.
Yes, you are right. And actually, I may turn the controls over to Nora, who is the person who has created this dashboard, to give a quick overview. And for people who join late, Nora is not feeling 100%, so she's asked to have her camera off.
Yep, that's right. Nobody needs to see me right now. I was just gonna show this Basin 7 dashboard that I've been working on, that shows up at the top And this is the amount that DEC has awarded to this basin so far with the target of 63.3 kilograms. And as you go down, you can see how much funds have been allocated so far to projects in this box here. I assume you can see my mouse too. And the overall cost effectiveness, which is kind of tricky to calculate when you have more projects in the design phase than in the implementation. But you can see kind of an overview there. And the number over here on the right of phosphorus credits that have made it to the implementation phase, or the much larger number below that, which is what's still in the design phase. So, and then down here, kind of an overview list of implementation phase projects. If they're in blue, that means they've been closed out. And I think what Dean was referencing earlier is these estimated implementation costs. So this is kind of like what we have in the pipeline a little bit, for design phase projects. So as you can see, it's a pretty significant number, of, yeah, estimated, costs for eventual implementation of projects in the design phase. So definitely something to keep in mind. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, happy to answer those. I'm not sure if I can share this, but I might be able to share some like screenshots of it for folks to have on file. But yeah, happy to answer any questions.
So Nora, I noticed that it's still showing the old Rocky Woods and 10 Bends number. So I would just point out to folks that
This? I don't
yes,
think it is.
the
The
11.
zero? Yeah,
Oh,
so
sorry.
it has
So
two
sorry.
columns.
Yep, I'm looking. Yep, my bad. Yes, I want to. Yeah, I just want to make clear for folks one of the things that happens with projects is they'll start out with one set of phosphorus numbers. Yeah, my apologies. I was looking at the
Yeah.
original column, and you can see that sometimes the projects don't deliver on the phosphorus reduction, and the Rocky Woods Strategic Wood Addition project is one where there had been some uncertainty, some questions about what methodology to use with the calculation of that. And there were some people that were warning us, people like Karen Bates warning us that the initial number might turn out to be high. And in fact, it did. And the situation with the 10 Bend Stream Buffer project, the planting project, is that it essentially had a mass failure of the plantings, and there have some brief discussions of this in the past, and it will come up again. But there is, in essence, as part of this clean water system, a kind of insurance system. And we had thought about pursuing that last year. And essentially, for some technical reasons, we put off, and we will pursue it in the coming year. And what that would mean is that there is an 8.2 kilogram reduction that was originally estimated, and it's zero. The clean water service provider may be able to get that money back because of this insurance type system and then apply it towards another project. It's also conceivable, but probably not likely, that it could be used to reinvest in the existing location, but for some different reasons, that's probably not something that's going to happen. But I just wanted to point those things out. And sorry for misrepresenting what you had done about the corrections. And yes, we will be able to share screenshots of this.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have both still in there just to keep a record of when this happens, where the phosphorus numbers change after implementation, but the overall number up here is reflects those changes.
So the process of getting these phosphorus credits it's singles, bunts and singles. It's not a lot of home runs. yet.
It's planning. It takes like 10 years. You know that, right? At least.
In
Um,
in some of the basins, they talk about their white elephant projects that somehow magically appear, or unicorn projects that magically appear on the horizon, and they score big credits, but we have not had those yet.
great. Well, thank you, Nora, for sharing the dashboard. That's really helpful to see. And was there a link in the packet to that? Or did I miss that?
There
I don't
wasn't
think so.
there was not a link to that because I had thought that we would be presenting it because there were some adjustments that were being made prior uh, after the release of the packet.
I'll follow up with a way to share it with everyone. I'm not sure exactly how, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering if, and I see the note in the chat too. I'm wondering after you make adjustments, is this something we want to have linked in the agenda on just like a regular basis to keep people up to date?
That the thinking is that this will become a regular part of the meeting. And yes, if it's something where the link, you can see a share button on the upper right. This is done on a computer platform that we work on called Smartsheet, and it should be possible for shares to be done with people external to the organization. So um, as long as um, yeah, if we are at the point, and I believe we are at the point where we have no problems with it being viewed, it would be something that you could click the link, and as the dashboard is updated, you would see the most up-to-date numbers.
Okay, great. Yeah, that would be great. And I think that addresses Chris's comment. So that was in the chat.
And Nora, since you have it open, you might even be able to drop a link in the chat to test whether or not people are able to do that.
Yeah. Um, oh, okay. Yeah, let me try it right now.
Sure.
And for people who work in both basins, there is a comparable version of this that's coming off the conveyor belt for the Missisquoi.
Looks like it wants you to sign in.
Does it still ask you to do that if you click the link?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it says like welcome to Smartsheet, and then I guess you could maybe sign in with like Google or Microsoft.
I'm not sure that there's a way around that.
Okay.
But I can look into it.
Is the question whether or not someone must create a Smartsheet account?
It seems like
Uh,
that's what it's asking to
Okay.
do.
I thought there might be a way for us to make it so that there's no account needed. I thought there was, but we'll look into that.
okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Um, okay. So any other questions about the dashboard? Looking to see who we have here with us still. Are there any other updates you had, Dean, that you wanted to share?
You're muted, Dean.
Yeah, I think you were muted.
My apologies. So the next meeting is the annual meeting, and the date for that, I believe I had mentioned in the transmittal email. Um, it would be the fourth Thursday in July, as we usually meet. And the things that are accomplished at the annual meeting, which is the one time of the year where we're trying to get everybody together if people want to gather. So it is still a hybrid meeting, but it's an in-person meeting held somewhere in the Lamoille Basin. Um, we would cover the election of the officers, um, And something that we tried last year, and I thought it went well, that could be considered as doing some kind of site tour of a project that has been funding, at least in part, with QUISP funds, if it's within not too far a drive. Last year we had our meeting, and the year before, I believe, um, we had it at the Hyde Park town offices, and then we drove from there to Elmore. So it could be that the agenda shapes up, and now that she's the vice chair, Mel can work with Megan to help decide that. But if there isn't a site tour, or if the site tour is something that can happen close by, then maybe there would be some other agenda items, possibly project adoption, because there's a little movement on that front. And if people have any other ideas for what you would like to see happen at this annual meeting, please let us know.
So I think the site tour was really helpful last year. I do like the idea of doing that again. I think I noticed last time, Dean, but I am away July 22nd to the 29th. So I guess it would be, I know Mel had to step out to another meeting, but it would be up to whether that time still works for everybody, and if Mel is willing to step in as vice chair, or if we want to consider a different time. I'm flexible with
Okay,
whatever works.
my apologies. You are out the week of the 24th, which would be when we would normally meet. And there are 5 Thursdays in July of 2026. And I think we might have touched on the possibility of having it on the fifth Thursday rather than the fourth Thursday because of your conflict. Am I imagining that, or did we actually talk about that? So we can send out something that gets people to confirm if that, if people can make the meeting on the 30th, as well as the 23rd, then that could be when we're going to look at that. My apologies for spacing on that.
On the 30th, okay. I think I should be back by then. I don't remember if I was out through the 29th or the 30th. I have to double check. I'm just looking at my calendar now. Yeah, I think I'm just gone the Wednesday to the Wednesday, the 22nd to the 29th, but I'll confirm that. So, yeah, if you want to, would you want to send out an email about it with the two proposed dates and just kind of see what works best for everybody?
Yeah, as soon as we get off here, I will send something out.
Okay, that sounds great. All right. Any other updates or questions that folks have?
We may have lost a quorum, or we're about to, so even if there were other comments, I think we're going to scram.
Okay. All right. Yeah, people are dropping off like flies. Okay. Fair enough. So why don't we entertain a motion to adjourn then?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, motion by Brad. Do we have a second?
Yes, you do. Kristen is raising her hand.
Kristen. All right. Yay. Okay, second by Kristen.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you so
Bye.
much, and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.